Last week I was playing around in Illustrator trying to create the best looking, most realistic lightning effect possible. An effect that could ideally be reused and applied to any object in just one click. And I not only figured it out, but everything you're about to learn in the next 5 minutes will not only enable you to create incredible graphic styles, but will drop even the jaws of the most seasoned designers. So first up, I've got some text, link below if you'd like to follow along, and I'm going to start by removing the fill and then opening the appearance panel. And from the bottom of this panel, let's add our first stroke. There we go, and let's change the color to white, and then thicken up that stroke weight. There we go, white outline text, great start Dan, but now it's time to start adding some effects. So let's go down to the effects icon, and we'll start by adding a Gaussian blur. And we'll keep this super subtle just to blur the text ever so slightly. And yes, this one is subtle, but it does help to sell that realism, and we will be using this again later on. Okay, next click this icon to duplicate that stroke. And for this one, we're going to turn off that blur effect and we're going to make the stroke a bit thinner as well. And of course, they're on top of each other so we can't see anything. But if we go and add another effect, and that is an offset path, we can now offset this stroke with a positive or negative value. Next, let's open up the properties for this stroke and we're going to check dashed line. And you can see the settings that I used before. Now, don't worry about the values for now, just make them totally random because we can change them later on anyway. Next, let's add another effect, and this time we're going to select tweak. And as you can see, this is where things start to get interesting. And by changing the horizontal and vertical values, you can create these sparks around the edge of the text. Haha, now we're getting somewhere. And this tweak effect is great for things like particles, sparkles, that must be a thing. Let's have a look. It actually is. Right, next we're going to duplicate this new sparky stroke, but for this one we're going to change the offset to a negative value so we get those sparks on the inside as well. And if we change the values for the dashed line, it's just going to make everything feel more random. Next, select the word type at the very top, and any effects we apply here at the top, they will of course be applied to everything. And now let's go and add a new effect to everything, and that is going to be roughen. And as you can see, this effect has a pretty significant impact, and it's really just a case of playing around with these sliders until you get something you're happy with. And there we go, I think that looks pretty decent. And to edit the effects, just make sure you do have your text selected, and I'm going to select the very first stroke we created and then duplicate this again. However, for this one, I'm going to change the color to blue and thicken up that stroke weight considerably. And you can see the blue peeping around the edge of the text with that thicker stroke weight. Now let's edit the Gaussian blur on this blue stroke, and we'll crank that up to 10. And this gives the text a nice glow, and you can also add a roughen effect if you'd like everything to be a bit less uniform. Right, once you've done that, duplicate the blue stroke, and then first of all, let's thicken up that stroke weight. There you go, you should get something that looks like this. And now we can open up the Gaussian blur and add even more blur as well. And that is a bit much, so let's open up the opacity panel and then change the blending mode to something like color dodge. And of course that did approximately nothing. Okay, let's try screen instead. Okay, that's a bit better, and then I can bring down the opacity value, and apparently the text has disappeared. What? Okay, yeah, that's not meant to happen. That must be a bit of a bug, but edit undo, edit redo seems to correct that value. Right, now we're going to duplicate this one again, increase the stroke weight, and bump up the blur. This is getting pretty wild. And next you can see in the top left corner, I've got this blue-white gradient, and I'm going to add this as a swatch and then give it a name. Next, I'm going to duplicate the stroke on the very top, which is one of the ones with the dashed lines. And for the color, I'm going to select the new blue and white gradient. And from the stroke properties, let's uncheck dashed line. And having this stroke change from blue to white helps to sell the realism of this lightning effect. And you can see I'm playing around with the offset path and tweak effects. And this just depends how crazy you'd like your lightning to be. And this is looking good. However, you may have noticed these horrible hard edges in the corner. And this is something that happens with too much blur. So let's go and change the document raster effect settings. We can crank up the resolution to 300 ppi and then bump up the clipping value to the maximum of 720. And this is a nifty way to get around those horrible hard edges, or you can just reduce the amount of blur in your design. Now on this particular design, there is still a weird hard line cutting through that second word. And to get around this, you can try keeping your text on one line, or you may not have this issue at all, or you can just dial back the amount of blur. And this part of the process is just about refining everything we've done so far. And ultimately the goal here is to get a lightning effect that you're happy with. And everything you're seeing on screen is entirely possible with the effects that we've covered in this video. So yeah, definitely experiment and have fun with this bit, because there's quite a lot you can create with just these effects. And if we select the type tool, remember this text is still fully editable. And lastly, the icing on the cake, making everything we've done reusable in just one click. And this is very cool. So if you go to Window and open up the Graphic Styles panel, there we go, lovely. Now simply drag your object into this panel and it will add it as a graphic style. Now that's done, let's delete the design. And then with the type tool, let's click anywhere and type some text. Of course, that's really small, so let's scale that one up. And now with the text or any object selected, click the graphic style and it's instantly applied. And to demo how much of a time saver this is, we can now play around with different fonts and we never actually have to create that effect from scratch again. And you can also use this to draw lightning. So let's grab the pencil tool and draw a lightning strike stroke. And then click that graphic style. And just like that, we have a bolt of lightning. And if you're not doing this with text and you'd like some more realistic forked lightning, well, with a few tweaks to the settings, you get this. And if you can't be asked to do this yourself, well, don't worry, there is a link below to download the lightning effect. There's also a video on screen somewhere if you'd like more Illustrator goodness. Take care, and I'll see you next time.